Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reviewing Lana Del Rey's what you could call her third studio album, even though technically it's her fourth, but I like to think that Born to Die and Paradise were kind of really one album, one body of work, so then it would be her third studio album. It's technically her fourth. It's called Honeymoon. It was released on September 18th, 2015. And it is my personal favorite Lana Del Rey record, which I know is not necessarily common for people who love Lana Del Rey. It's actually, I believe, now kind of in history will be kind of looked at as one of her most overlooked albums, but it's the reason why it's the first album I'm reviewing, because for me it's my favorite. And this is definitely Lana at her most experimental, as we've seen so far, but it's also Lana at her most sort of spaced out and I would say almost relaxed, I mean, the title of the album is called Honeymoon, so all of her albums kind of follow a story of a relationship, or at different stages of the relationship, and this one is sort of generally tracking the relationship at the honeymoon phase. I mean, it really does follow that pretty well. And so this album is about the highs mostly of a lot of things. It's not so much about the lows, though it does go there, but it's in a very mellow sort of way. It's melodramatic. It's a very chilled out album, to be very precise here. So to get right into it, I mean, my favorite song on the album is the title track. This song, which we heard way before we heard any other songs in the album, just floored me in that it's so classic Lana. I mean, it's not necessarily new territory for her, but it is just so cinematically, emotionally layered and rich. I mean, there is just every instrumentation, every note that is sung, and with the lyrics, it is so rich in flavor. I mean, it's a complete experience to listen to, and it's very calming. It's very evocative at the same time. It has almost an exotic feel. It perfectly embodies what you would imagine a honeymoon would be, especially the evening, when you're with your significant other and you're about to embark upon this kind of scary life journey with them, and you're feeling all of these emotions, and it's very intense and vivid, but very doused in this sort of melodramatic sort of atmosphere. I mean, everything. It's just all in this song. And it's the perfect album opener. To be perfectly honest, the rest of the album, it's hard to live up to this first song. But a lot of Lana fans didn't like it. They were feeling like it sounded too similar to things she's done before. Some people think it's kind of a snooze fest. And that's a problem I think a lot of people run into. But this is more, I think, non-Lana fans. When reviewing this album, is that the album can get very repetitive, or it can get very difficult to sort of pay attention because some things start to sound the same. And I can understand to some degree this is not her most lively album. Everything is, even the high, what would be considered the single-worthy tracks, or the tracks that are more high octane, are still very, very low key. The beats are very subtle. Everything is very, very low key on this album. I want to just touch into the lyrics here on this song, Honeymoon. Even just with the opening, we both know that it's not fashionable to love me, but you don't go, 'cause truly there's nobody for you but me. And then she sings later, we both know the history of violence that surrounds you, but I'm not scared. There's nothing to lose now that I've found you. Which this is possibly, referencing previous things that she's talked about in past music. And it's basically saying that we're both not perfect. We're actually, probably the stars would not have aligned for us normally. We're not a traditional romance, but here we are, and we're going to make the most of this. We're going to surrender to this true, deep, dark blue love. She references the color blue a lot in this album, and the fact that the way she sings dark blue in this song I love blues, and all shades of blue is my favorite color, although I like aquamarine the most. It's my favorite color. Dark blue fits the vibe of this song and a lot of songs in this album beautifully. And so I love the way she sings that, and I love the way she alludes to that, how this relationship is feeling right now. It's deep, dark blue. It's got some darkness to it, but it's super emotive. It's super rich in emotion. The next track, Music to Watch Boys To, is a perfect example of this, where it does build to something you think would be a little bit more grand than it is. In terms, it instead becomes very atmospheric and airy and light, but it still feels like a song that is going in a direction that has a lot of power behind it. So it definitely feels like a not a ballad, like for example. So you can distinguish between the songs that would be more like ballads and the songs that would be more like radio hits. But this is still very low. This is very low energy. But it has some really cool instrumentation for it. It's not my favorite song on the album, but the instrumentation that goes on, the sort of little flutes and stuff that go on in the background, I think are amazing. She does some really cool vocal stuff here that they're really pleasing to the ears. She does that a lot on this album. I think her vocals are really strong here, and she gets a chance to showcase that. And even though she layers her voice a lot in this album to make it a little bit more ethereal and a little bit more layered and atmospheric, her voice really shines through. And I really appreciate that about this record. Terrence Loves You is it's like a love letter to jazz music. I mean, this is something you would expect her to have made, I think, when she was a little bit more in her indie phase. I mean, she still could be considered an indie artist, but this is a very sort of classic Lana song in that it's got all the elements you would expect for a beautiful Lana ballad, but it's not exactly a ballad. It's a very smooth jazz tune. It's a theory that this song is related to David Bowie, who had a brother named Terrence who was autistic, as far as I'm aware, and this song is kind of paying homage to that. That's why she starts singing Space Odyssey by David Bowie when she sings Ground Control to Major Tom. So, in a lot of ways, this song has that level to it. A lot of her music does have a very sort of historical precedence to it. She's referencing something from Hollywood glamour or some icon from the past. And so I think that this song was very fitting in that regard. And it's a great tribute to David Bowie, but also to his lost brother. But it's a very touching song. Not my favorite, but it's very touching. And we go into God Knows I Tried, and she's getting very stripped back, very sort of almost, I don't want to say country, but this has this sort of like feeling of being on the porch with just your guitar, and you're just sort of ruminating, like putting a song together. It has that singer-songwriter feel that is very, I mean, not necessarily what you'd always expect. I mean, it's not necessarily what you'd want the whole album to be, but it's definitely fits really well into the scope of this. And by the fourth track, you're sort of ready to like really kind of strip back, even though of course this has always been a strip back album, very relaxed, very minimalistic, all of those things. So moving on to the lead single off of this album, High by the Beach. It is actually my least favorite song on this album. I don't necessarily think it fits the theme of the rest of the songs on this album. It is trying to be a little bit more up-tempo, and it's trying to be a little bit more radio friendly, which I think actually hurts it. It's not bad, but it's just not, I just can't really get into it as much. I do like all the vocal effects that go on at the beginning of the song and the end and the outro and intro. I think that's really cool and experimental and plays into the experimentation of this album. A lot of the songs have really cool intros and outros, which is something I love about this album, which you need to hear with headphones because you can't really hear it sometimes through speakers really well. Like, there's a lot of rich electronic or like vocal kind of effects going on that are super rich and detailed. But High by the Beach for me, it feels, I can see where it fits in the album, but for me, am not personally like crazy about it, but it's still a nice song. But I think she's done this better with songs like West Coast, where she had a little bit more rhythm to them. This song, like the rhythm just feels a little bit fake or a little bit like forced. And it would have honestly served her a little bit better, I think, if she stripped back that backing, beat that she had going on, which I didn't really think did very much for the song, personally. So moving from High by the Beach, we get to a song that is a little bit more of like an uncanny or an unexpected, what you consider upbeat song, which is Freak. It starts out very somber and minimal, brooding almost. This song is very abstract, but then it crescendos into this sort of like chaotic but somehow soothing sort of chorus that you just sort of get swept up in. She's saying, "Come to California, be a freak like me." There's a lot to unpack here. Again, it's not my favorite song on the album. It's definitely not that melodic, but it has this sort of atmosphere to it that you can't help but kind of get pulled in. And it, to me, it talks a lot about drug use, and it talks about, like, come escape, get high with me. And I think the song does a really good job of sounding like how that feels. You know what I mean? It's a really, she does a really good job with this, and that, the production and the vocals are distorted enough and sort of weird enough to just sort of feel like a trip. And the video really plays on this like really well with Father John Misty. It's like one of my favorite music videos of hers. It's simple, and it may not seem like a lot's going on, but it feels like these people are really high. Like, it doesn't feel fake. It feels like a trip. It feels like euphoria, because of drugs. And it's an interesting sort of juxtaposition to some of the other euphorias that maybe she talks about later in the record that are not so drug induced, but more induced by love. So then we move into a really interesting and sort of unique song, Art Deco, which is very jazz tinged, but not quite. I think it's trying to go a little bit back to sort of the Born to Die sound with that traditional beat that we're used to hearing. We hear it a lot on Born to Die, and I like that she's playing on that. However, I think the song could have gone a little bit further with that. It's still a little too soft-toned, or soft-core, as you could say, but then again, it fits the album, so that's my dilemma with it. To be perfectly honest, High by the Beach, Freak, and Art Deco are my 3 least favorite songs on the album, because they are the 3 songs that are trying hard to be played on the radio. But I can understand why she made them. I mean, the album, if it was all just really like soothing, kind of relaxing music, would probably get to be way too much. 14 songs of that would be too much. So we need to have something that's a little bit experimental and a little bit edgy. And I think that that's what that song fills for that purpose. From then we soothe into the latter half of this record with this beautiful interlude called Burnt Norton, which is a poem by T.S. Eliot that she says beautifully. I mean, I remember when it was like teased on the phone, you could dial a phone number and you could listen to this poem being read while the, music, vague music was playing in the background. It was just so beautiful and really captivating. And I love when she pulls in these poets. Again, she's really trying to like pay homage to these great artists, and in doing so, it puts her at the same level, in my opinion, of those great artists of the past. We move then forward into Religion, which really comes beautifully after the end of this interlude. You feel so much like, she says you've come into the rose garden, and you feel like you're really in the rose garden when she sings this song. I love the hopefulness of this song. I mean, it's very like, okay, we're here, we're going to enjoy like our time together. You are my religion. I keep coming back to you. Everything is fine now, she sings. Let sleeping dogs lay. All our minds are made up now. All our beds are made. No one's out of time, no. Chips fall wherever they may. Leave it all behind. Let the ocean wash away. So we've gone through some stuff. Let it happen. Let people say what they want to say, but it's not going to affect our love. It's not going to change how I feel about you, how strongly I feel about you. And so she sings Alleluia, to her boyfriend, and it's as simple as that, and it doesn't need to be any more complex. This is true love. We move into a song, Salvatore, or Salvatore, and this has, again, really interesting intro. And some really interesting instrumentation. I love this song in its very sort of time period atmospheric sound that it has. I mean, it really makes you think of Italy, and it really makes you think of this lover on this beach that she's talking about or lamenting for, because it is kind of a melancholy tune. And the way she alludes to soft ice cream is kind of true love, I think, is so... Oh, it's so Lana. I mean, it fits really well, that metaphor. Let's dig into soft ice cream on the beach. Like, you could talk about cake by the ocean, yeah, whatever, but you could do it in a little bit more of a classy way, like Lana, and say, like, now it's time to eat soft ice cream. Like, the imagery says enough, and it's perfect and it's well sung. Really, really love this song for what it is. Melody was a little bit more strong than lyrics for me, just in terms of first listening. The lyrics are really rich to this. as well. We move into the latter half of this record and we have a song like 24. Now, 24, to be perfectly honest, is not a song that I particularly listen to a lot, but when you're listening to the whole album, you have to play it. It's just a very drawn out, minimalistic song, but it has some jazz undertones, kind of echoing back to Terrence Loves You. And it's just kind of just her sort of feeling around with these different sort of ways of expressing her love. There's only 24 hours in a day, but that's not enough. You know, it's just another endearing love song. Again, it doesn't stand out to me, and I could see how it could put someone to sleep, because for me, it's probably the one song where I'm like, you know, maybe she's going a little too chilled out here. Maybe we could take things up a notch. But, you know, it still serves its purpose. I think The Blackest Day answers that really well, because in The Blackest Day, she really takes the song somewhere, and, you know, she talks about in this sort of painstaking, I mean, this is when she talks about the dark stuff. The rest of the album's like all kind of like romantic and relaxing, even with those always those dark things. Lana's music always has the dark side to it, but this song is like, whoa, like she's, you know, this is about the dark stuff. Ever since you've gone away. And I mean, it's kind of interesting, and it's a break in the story, because it's like, okay, so this guy's gone now, like she's on her own, and she's explaining how it was the worst experience of her life, like true withdrawal. And, you know, the way she rhymes, the way she pairs words together, it fits really well. And it's a great song to just sort of play when you're feeling like you have been like truly left in the dumps by someone and you're just like aching. It plays to that so well. I don't listen to happy songs anymore. All I listen to is Billie Holiday, or like all I, you know, I can't, this isn't just a phase I'm going through. Like this is like real shit. Like this is bad. And that urgency is addressed in the song. We move forward into the final song of the, well, it's the final original song. It's not the final track on the album, but it really feels like the closer, which is Swan Song, which is another one of my favorites. It's actually my second favorite song on this album. Very underrated. This song is so cinematic, so evocative. It starts out with this beautiful, swirling vocal overlay that just sweeps you up. And you really feel like you're living in slow motion. Which a lot of this album kind of does evoke. It does evoke life in slow motion. But this song just, it takes its time. It builds as it should. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't bombast, but it does what it needs to really sweep you up. And it's not a ballad, but it's not a pop song. Like this is just pure emotion dictating, as she's saying, I'll never sing again. This is a moment where we need to take this relationship to a place where we're truly safe. I view it as sort of like they're getting to us now. Like they're trying to hunt us down. So come with me. You know, we're gonna escape all of this. Maybe it's talking again to like going into another trippy sort of atmospheric psychedelic era of something of Lana's, or in Lana's mind, or it's literally about, I mean, you could view this song through the eyes of an elderly couple entering retirement. It actually, through the lyrics, really references that pretty strongly. It says, put your white tennis shoes on, which, I mean, to be perfectly honest, who wears white tennis shoes? Elderly people. I mean, you can see that illusion there, and I think it's beautiful. Even though these people might not be elderly, she could be talking about as if she was an elderly woman, talking to her, you know, her rich husband who's made a lot of money. Hey, you know, it's time to retire. It's going to be honeymoon forever now. You know, come follow me. Why work so hard when you can just be free? You've got your moment now. You've made your legacy. I mean, come on. This is almost, I mean, I can so hear this being like the anthem for like some real rich millionaire. I mean, come on. Let's leave the world for the ones who change everything. Nothing could stop the two of us. Let's just get lost. That's what we want after all, isn't it? So leave the world to the young. We're just going to be in our permanent honeymoon now. And it's a nice song. It's an ode to retirement, really. But it has like a deep subtext to it. I mean, this is going to be our swan song. Like, this is our last dance. But let's make it the best. You know, let's leave on this really, really powerful note here. And let's make our legacy, you know, like, let's live up to it, of our love. Do you like where you're heading to? You know, like all the lyrics, I could talk about this song for so long. It just really, I really liked that she was pulling from that experience, and I like that the song is tying into that theme of, like, kind of moving forward into somewhere known with your lover. Could it be eloping? Could it be, you know, moving out of, you know, a house, moving away from your parents, you know, all of these things. But it could be very well retirement, and from the perspective of an elderly couple who's obviously made quite a bit of money, who don't have to work anymore. So all the layers there. Great storytelling. The final song is a cover of Nina Simone's Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. Now, I will just say this. I loved her cover of The Other Woman on Ultraviolence. That was a phenomenal take on a vintage song. For me, her Nina Simone cover, to be perfectly honest, it really did not do the same thing for me. I just think the original by Nina is just so powerful, so emotional in how she sings. Lana does, you know, I don't want to say appropriate, but she does bring in her beautiful way of singing these sort of classic songs. And I like that it's the end of the album, because she's sort of starting to come up with this trend of ending her albums with great classic songs. But to me, it just doesn't, I don't know. It's a bit of a miss for me. I just feel like I appreciate she's paying homage to the greats, and I know she's not trying to make this song better than the original. I can tell, and I know that's not what she wants to do. That's the last thing she would want to do. She's just paying homage to a song she loves. But the original, it's hard, you know? Like, it's a different take, though. She takes a very different take of the song. So, but for me, the original, and I've heard a lot of other people say the original still is where all the real emotion comes from, but that's an issue a lot of people face with covers. But, you know, it depends. I've heard covers that actually are better than the originals for me. Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah has got to be actually a perfect example. I find Leonard Cohen's original Hallelujah actually not as emotive. It's beautiful, but I found covers done by lots of other artists to be actually a lot more engrossing for me. But that's just to each his own. So anyway, that's Lana's Honeymoon album. For me, I mean, honestly, it gets a 4.5 out of 5, which is the highest score I'd give a Lana Del Rey album, because of just, I think she really tried to really work on melody here, and some really amazing atmospheric vocal stuff. I mean, I really appreciate that. It's something I like. It's not mainstream. I mean, this album, it's not necessarily going to be remembered as her, like, big album, and it's definitely not Born to Die, but it stands on its own as this really neat body of work that feels very cohesive, that tells a story, that is about, like, one shade of a color, you know? Like, she really just picked that one. And I'm really excited for her upcoming album, Lust for Life, is how she picks up on this and sort of dives into a different, almost a different shade of a different color of her life, or her experience, or the human experience. So for me, that is Lana's Honeymoon. Highlight tracks, definitely Honeymoon and Swan Song are two of my favorites, along with Religion, Salvatore, and I guess maybe God Knows I Tried as my other favorites. Let me know what you thought about Lana's Honeymoon, if you felt like it was underrated as well, and I will be reviewing her other albums, Ultraviolence and Born to Die, in the future as well. I'm a big Lana Del Rey fan. That's that, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and subscribe if you like to see more album reviews.